The wait continues south of the border, of course, where Americans are eager to learn the winner of the presidential election. I think we could all say that. Ballot counting continues in several key states, which could tip the vote at any moment. So margins in Pennsylvania and Nevada remain razor thin, while Joe Biden has now taken the lead in Georgia. In his first address since election night, the president doubled down on false claims about mail-in ballots and widespread fraud without offering any evidence.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. If you count the votes that came in late, we're looking at them very strongly.
Democracy is sometimes messy. It sometimes requires a little patience as well. But that patience has been rewarded now for more than 240 years with a system of governance that's been the envy of the world.
Joe Biden continues to urge patience and faith in the system while expressing continued confidence that he would win. Now, a state everyone is watching is Pennsylvania. Its 20 electoral college votes alone would be enough to crown a winner in this election. Mike Armstrong is in Philadelphia watching the ballot count very closely. Mike, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us. Now, as you heard, the president alleging the election is being stolen from him. That is clearly not happening. Can you make sense of what is happening, how it applies to what's happening in Pennsylvania, especially with the attempts to stop the count?
Yeah. To understand what's going on in Pennsylvania, you sort of have to look back to Election Day when the polls closed. The day of votes were counted first, the mail-in and early ballots were counted after that, and it's a slower process. As they count them, they're swinging about 70-80% towards Joe Biden. That's something people expected. Democrats were campaigning for, well, a couple of months, telling their supporters to get out there, vote early, get your ballots in, whereas Donald Trump was telling people vote day of because the whole mail-in ballot system was had the potential for fraud. At one point, by the way, we were in York, Pennsylvania, doing a couple of stories on early balloting, and a group of 100 people showed up at once all together to drop off their mail-in ballots. So while the Democrats were banking those early votes, getting them in, making sure they were ready to go on Election Day, they wouldn't have to worry about them, Donald Trump was doing the opposite and just telling people to, no, wait for it, go in on Election Day. What we're seeing right now was expected, was predicted.
And they weren't even allowed to start counting until the night of the election. So obviously, there's going to be a slower process given the circumstances, given the more mail-in ballots. And given all this, though, there was a delay in counting ballots in Pittsburgh. What happened there?
Yeah, well, nothing out of the ordinary. Basically, the county officials there say they had two groups of ballots that required a little bit of extra scrutiny. So they took yesterday to sort of do some administrative work, and they're going to go back at it at 9 a.m. this morning. Now, why did those two groups of ballots require that extra scrutiny? Well, they say that the first group was 29,000 ballots that were sent out with problems on them from the vendor originally, and they had to be reissued. So this was a procedure that they agreed on weeks ago. They would count them sort of last, on the Friday, actually. The other group is about 6,000 ballots that have a mistake on them, something like perhaps a smudge from the printer, something like that. Those ballots can still be used, but they're not scannable, so the information has to be entered by hand. That's going to take some time. Again, they'll be back at it in Pittsburgh. That's Allegheny County, probably within minutes, actually, within the hour.
But that's what it comes down to. Literally, it could come down to a few dozen votes, and that is the scrutiny and the time. Painstaking as it is, it's necessary under the circumstances, and obviously they want to get it right. Despite this, both sides demonstrating for different reasons, obviously, and some cases becoming a little violent, and there are also reports of a planned attack at a convention center. Where is that happening, and what do we know about the allegations and anything following that?
Yeah, if I lean back, I can actually see the convention center where that counting is going on here in Philadelphia. I was actually there last night. It was the atmosphere, nothing special. Quite a few protesters, party atmosphere, that type of thing, and only about 5 pro-Trump protesters. But police arrested 2 men last night. They have 2 men in custody. They were picked up outside that convention center. According to police, they were tipped off by someone. They're not saying who, but at around 10 p.m., that tip said a group of individuals from out of state were headed here in a silver Hummer, that they were potentially armed and that they intended to do something at the convention center to disrupt things. Now, because the arrest was at the convention center, there's a lot of media there, even late at night. So there are images of the men in handcuffs, as well as their vehicle outside the convention center. And if you look into their vehicle, you can see there are numerous QAnon stickers, that conspiracy theory group that pushes all sorts of strange theories. We won't go into those, but they seem to be people who are following QAnon closely.
Now, Mike, I want to ask you your personal take on something. You spent many days there, even weeks really, given the circumstances, and now we are on the 4th day of this election, effectively. What are you feeling, and what kind of experiences have you had when you speak to people there? Is there still so much tension given the divide, given how many opinions? How would you break that down?
Yeah, if you watch Donald Trump and his pointing the finger at Philadelphia and saying he doesn't trust things, we went to the convention center yesterday and met a gentleman from Queens who stood there and said, I came here to the convention center because I don't trust what's going on. I don't trust what's going on. Really parroting what the president's been saying. The other thing, you're asking what I'm going through being here, what it's like to cover it. I've been watching Fox News last night, and they're talking about, can we annul this election? Can we have a redo? Can the Electoral College representatives that are chosen by the state not follow the way the state votes? All sorts of things like that. Just really throwing gasoline on what is really a very tense situation down here.
Yeah, in the city of brotherly love, not a lot of love lost. Mike Armstrong joining us from Philadelphia. Thank you so much.